Welcome to what I hope is going to be a very special event. I think it's fair to say that the last few months have brought a new sense of reality to all of us, a sense of change that most likely none of us really thought would come up upon us so quickly, so suddenly. One of the many things that went away during this lockdown, this shutdown of nearly all of the society we were so used to, are conferences. In the UFO field and what we might call the alternative knowledge field, these have always been very important. And think about it. In a world like ours, when there's so much pressure, more now than ever before, for people to conform to certain ways of thinking and certain ways of perceiving the world, those of us who think differently have always received tremendous value from those types of events. In the first place, we get to encounter new research and new ideas about the things that matter to us. Things that, even in the era of incredible information on the web or on YouTube, can be hard to find. It's something that conference goers have known for a long time. Even today, not everything makes it to the web. But also, and for many people, this is even more important, is the chance to connect with other like-minded folks. You go to an event like this and you realize you're not alone. There are others who share your concerns, who share your curiosities, your intense desire to rip through the countless layers of untruth that get between you and unvarnished reality. Yeah, in that regard, there are many others just like you, and they attend events just like this one. Now, during this pandemic, however, we've had to learn new rules, new behaviors, and new coping strategies for all kinds of things. So quickly our world has become virtual in so many ways. And since we have no idea how long it's going to be before we ever get back to a world where you can just drive or fly to a UFO conference, we have this, an exclusive online full-day event, and in case you still don't realize it, a lot of interactivity. The system that we're using is very powerful, it's robust, it's able to handle high bandwidth, and it allows you a genuine chance to interact with other attendees, and also with me. The software that we have allows full chat functionality. It allows the ability to respond to instant polls, which I think is a very cool thing, and also for the exclusive AMA sessions, face-to-face live time with me, or with me and my wife Tracy, or with me and my colleague Alejandro Rojas. And plus, in my view, there's always something exciting about participating in a live event. You never know how it's going to turn out. There's risk, there's the unknown. That's actually a big attraction, in my opinion. Now, a lot of preparation has gone into this event, both from myself in preparing two of the most important presentations I've ever given, and also on the technical end, in which we've tested and gone over everything to make sure it's a smooth experience. But keep in mind something. This is new for us as just like it is for you. We have worked tirelessly to make this a great event, and I think we're going to nail it. But keep in mind, we are all in this together, working our way through the wilderness into something new. Speaking of which, preparing for my presentations has taken me, several weeks. It's prompted me to think about so much of the history of UFOs in a fresh way, but also about the history of our own species. And in thinking about this, I have come to the firm conclusion that there have been a very, very few times in human history that are as profound as what we are all living through now. There's the discovery of fire, there's the creation of art, there's the invention of agriculture, the birth of writing, birth of science, and now this, where we stand today as we move through the 21st century. It is not hype to say this. It's a reality check. The transformation that we are seeing in the very nature of what it means to be a human being, this may be something that you have longed for, or it may be something that you dread. But it is happening. There is not a shred of doubt in my mind. So just take a breath, stop whatever you're doing or whatever you're thinking about, and reflect on that fact, that you are living through one of the most awe-inspiring and reality-shattering times that human beings have ever experienced. The two presentations I prepared are two pieces that go perfectly together. Each has given me insights into the other. But it has become clear to me that we as a civilization, as a species, are moving fast into something we've never experienced before. Yeah, there have often been periods of change in the past, but nothing, absolutely nothing, is like what we are experiencing now. It's different qualitatively, not just a difference in amount, but in kind. I'll have a lot to say about that in my presentation, but I'm going to leave you with this thought, that it is impossible to understand the presence of other beings here on planet Earth, what we call UFOs or the alien phenomenon, without understanding where we as humans are in the long trajectory of our existence. Because, my friends, we are about to leap into their world, and they know this. There is no way that they cannot know this. Some of them may well have known about us for a long time, but it was during the course of the 20th century that we really got their attention, and, as it strongly appears to me, brought the whole neighborhood in to see what's going on. And it has also become clear that this COVID pandemic, and especially the global response to it, is likely to hasten, not slow down, this development. On a personal level, I have mixed feelings at best about this. There's a lot of concern that I have. There's a lot that even worries me. But I do retain a dogged faith in who we are and what we as a species are capable of. For my part, I will never, ever bet against the human race. Now, before I go, a couple of quick administration things that I want to just talk about here with you. You have a link for each segment of this event that you purchased. So let me say that again, because it's important. Welcome to what I hope is going to be a very special event. I think it's fair to say that the last few months have brought a new sense of reality to all of us, a sense of change that most likely none of us really thought would come up upon us so quickly, so suddenly. One of the many things that went away during this lockdown, this shutdown of nearly all of the society we were so used to, are conferences. In the UFO field and what we might call the alternative knowledge field, these have always been very important. And think about it. In a world like ours, when there's so much pressure, more now than ever before, for people to conform to certain ways of thinking and certain ways of perceiving the world, those of us who think differently have always received tremendous value from those types of events. In the first place, we get to encounter new research and new ideas about the things that matter to us. Things that, even in the era of incredible information on the web or on YouTube, can be hard to find. It's something that conference goers have known for a long time. Even today, not everything makes it to the web. But also, and for many people, this is even more important, is the chance to connect with other like-minded folks. You go to an event like this and you realize you're not alone. There are others who share your concerns, who share your curiosities, your intense desire to rip through the countless layers of untruth that get between you and unvarnished reality. Yeah, in that regard, there are many others just like you, and they attend events just like this one. Now, during this pandemic, however, we've had to learn new rules, new behaviors, and new coping strategies for all kinds of things. So quickly our world has become virtual in so many ways. And since we have no idea how long it's going to be before we ever get back to a world where you can just drive or fly to a UFO conference, we have this, an exclusive online full-day event, and in case you still don't realize it, a lot of interactivity. The system that we're using is very powerful, it's robust, it's able to handle high bandwidth, and it allows you a genuine chance to interact with other attendees, and also with me. The software that we have allows full chat functionality, It allows the ability to respond to instant polls, which I think is a very cool thing. And also for the exclusive AMA sessions, face-to-face live time with me, or with me and my wife Tracy, or with me and my colleague Alejandro Rojas. And plus, in my view, there's always something exciting about participating in a live event. You never know how it's going to turn out. There's risk. There's the unknown. That's actually a big attraction, in my opinion. Now, a lot of preparation has gone into this event, both from myself in preparing two of the most important presentations I've ever given, and also on the technical end, in which we've tested and gone over everything to make sure it's a smooth experience. But keep in mind something. This is new for us, as just like it is for you. We have worked tirelessly to make this a great event, and I think we're going to nail it. But keep in mind, we are all in this together, working our way through the wilderness into something new. Speaking of which, preparing for my presentations has taken me, several weeks. It's prompted me to think about so much of the history of UFOs in a fresh way, but also about the history of our own species. And in thinking about this, I have come to the firm conclusion that there have been a very, very few times in human history that are as profound as what we are all living through now. There's the discovery of fire. There's the creation of art. There's the invention of agriculture, the birth of writing, birth of science, and now this, where we stand today as we move through the 21st century. It is not hype to say this. It's a reality check. The transformation that we are seeing in the very nature of what it means to be a human being, this may be something that you have longed for, or it may be something that you dread. But it is happening. There is not a shred of doubt in my mind. So just take a breath, and stop whatever you're doing or whatever you're thinking about, and reflect on that fact, that you are living through one of the most awe-inspiring and reality-shattering times that human beings have ever experienced. The two presentations I prepared are two pieces that go perfectly together. Each has given me insights into the other. But it has become clear to me that we as a civilization, as a species, are moving fast into something we've never experienced before. Yeah, there have often been periods of change in the past, but nothing, absolutely nothing, is like what we are experiencing now. It's different qualitatively, not just a difference in amount, but in kind. I'll have a lot to say about that in my presentation, but I'm going to leave you with this thought, that it is impossible to understand the presence of other beings here on planet Earth, what we call UFOs or the alien phenomenon, without understanding where we as humans are in the long trajectory of our existence. Because, my friends, we are about to leap into their world, and they know this. There is no way that they cannot know this. Some of them may well have known about us for a long time, but it was during the course of the 20th century that we really got their attention, and, as it strongly appears to me, brought the whole neighborhood in to see what's going on. And it has also become clear that this COVID pandemic, and especially the global response to it, is likely to hasten, not slow down, this development. On a personal level, I have mixed feelings at best about this. There's a lot of concern that I have. There's a lot that even worries me. But I do retain a dogged faith in who we are and what we as a species are capable of. For my part, I will never, ever bet against the human race. Now, before I go, a couple of quick administration things that I want to just talk about here with you. You have a link for each segment of this event that you purchased. So let me say that again, because it's important. Each lecture or segment of this event has a unique link. So if you purchased a full-day pass for the three main presentations, that includes my two lectures plus my interview with Alejandro, then you will have a separate link for each one of those, which means that you will actually leave the event room each time the presentation is over, and then you will click the link for each next event that you've purchased. And this is also true for each AMA event. So if you purchased an AMA, then that link was sent to you actually in a separate email. Now, I recommend that you enter the event room early each time you are in an event. We're going to make sure that the event room is open 5 to 15 minutes before we start. And I think this is especially important for those of you who have purchased tickets for the AMA sessions, since they involve making sure that your video camera and your microphone are working properly. We want to get all of that worked out and out of the way before we start those sessions. And as a matter of fact, before we get going, I encourage you to take a moment to become familiar with the features on the dash. Look at the features and the controls that are available to you. On your right side, you'll see the chat box, and you're quickly going to notice that the newest comments are at the top. During my two main presentations, this chat function will really be for all the attendees to share their own reactions with each other, because I'm not really going to be able to engage in the chat room while I'm giving my presentations. But during my interview with Alejandro and during all of our AMA sessions, that chat function will be something that I see as well, and I may very well respond to it. Now, of course, Tracy's going to be in chat during all of the sessions, so she's going to see everything that you say. And keep your eye out for instant polls that will be offered during all of the events. And that's it. I want to thank each of you for being here, and I really want you to enjoy the experience of doing something new, of exploring something important with me, and of being part of a community that, from everything that I can see, is more vibrant. Of reality to all of us, a sense of change that most likely none of us really thought would come up upon us so quickly, so suddenly. One of the many things that went away during this lockdown, this shutdown of nearly all of the society we were so used to, are conferences. In the UFO field and what we might call the alternative knowledge field, these have always been very important. And think about it. In a world like ours, when there's so much pressure, I mean, more now than ever before, for people to conform to certain ways of thinking and certain ways of perceiving the world, those of us who think differently have always received tremendous value from those types of events. In the first place, we get to encounter new research and new ideas about the things that matter to us. Things that, even in the era of incredible information on the web or on YouTube, can be hard to find. It's something that conference goers have known for a long time. Even today, not everything makes it to the web. But also, and for many people, this is even more important, is the chance to connect with other like-minded folks. You go to an event like this and you realize you're not alone. There are others who share your concerns, who share your curiosities, your intense desire to rip through the countless layers of untruth that get between you and unvarnished reality. Yeah, in that regard, there are many others just like you, and they attend events just like this one. Now, during this pandemic, however, we've had to learn new rules, new behaviors, and, well, new coping strategies for all kinds of things. So quickly our world has become virtual in so many ways. And since we have no idea how long it's going to be before we ever get back to a world where you can just drive or fly to a UFO conference, we have this, an exclusive online full-day event, and in case you still don't realize it, a lot of interactivity. The system that we're using is very powerful, it's robust, it's able to handle high bandwidth, and it allows you a genuine chance to interact with other attendees, and also with me. The software that we have allows full chat functionality. It allows the ability to respond to instant polls, which I think is a very cool thing, and also for the exclusive AMA sessions, face-to-face live time with me, or with me and my wife Tracy, or with me and my colleague Alejandro Rojas. And plus, in my view, there's always something exciting about participating in a live event. You never know how it's going to turn out. There's risk, there's the unknown. That's actually a big attraction, in my opinion. Now, a lot of preparation has gone into this event, both from myself in preparing two of the most important presentations I've ever given, and also on the technical end, in which we've tested and gone over everything to make sure it's a smooth experience. But keep in mind something. This is new for us, as just like it is for you. We have worked tirelessly to make this a great event, and I think we're going to nail it. But keep in mind, we are all in this together, working our way through the wilderness into something new. Speaking of which, preparing for my presentations has taken me, well, several weeks. It's prompted me to think about so much of the history of UFOs in a fresh way, but also about the history of our own species. And in thinking about this, I have come to the firm conclusion that there have been a very, very few times in human history that are as profound as what we are all living through now. There's the discovery of fire, there's the creation of art, there's the invention of agriculture, the birth of writing, birth of science, and now, well, now this. Where we stand today as we move through the 21st century. It is not hype to say this. It's a reality check. The transformation that we are seeing in the very nature of what it means to be a human being, well, this may be something that you have longed for, or it may be something that you dread. But it is happening. There is not a shred of doubt in my mind. So just take a breath, stop whatever you're doing or whatever you're thinking about and reflect on that fact, that you are living through one of the most awe-inspiring and reality-shattering times that human beings have ever experienced. The two presentations I prepared are two pieces that go perfectly together. Each has given me insights into the other. But it has become clear to me that we as a civilization, as a species, are moving fast into something we've never experienced before. Yeah, there have often been periods of change in the past, but nothing, absolutely nothing, is like what we are experiencing now. It's different qualitatively, not just a difference in amount, but in kind. I'll have a lot to say about that in my presentation, but I'm going to leave you with this thought, that it is impossible to understand the presence of other beings here on planet Earth, what we call UFOs or the alien phenomenon, without understanding where we as humans are in the long trajectory of our existence. Because, my friends, we are about to leap into their world, and they know this. There is no way that they cannot know this. Some of them may well have known about us for a long time, but it was during the course of the 20th century that we really got their attention, and, as it strongly appears to me, brought the whole neighborhood in to see what's going on. And it has also become clear that this COVID pandemic, and especially the global response to it, is likely to hasten, not slow down, this development. On a personal level, I have mixed feelings at best about this. There's a lot of concern that I have. There's a lot that even worries me. But I do retain a dogged faith in who we are and what we as a species are capable of. For my part, I will never, ever bet against the human race. Now, before I go, a couple of quick administration things that I want to just talk about here with you. You have a link for each segment of this event that you purchased. So let me say that again, because it's important. Each lecture or segment of this event has a unique link. So if you purchased a full-day pass for the 3 main presentations, that includes my 2 lectures plus my interview with Alejandro, then you will have a separate link for each one of those, which means that you will actually leave the event room each time the presentation is over, and then you will click the link for each next event that you've purchased. And this is also true for each AMA event. So if you purchased an AMA, then that link was sent to you actually in a separate email. Now, I recommend that you enter the event room early each time you are in an event. We're going to make sure that the event room is open 5 to 15 minutes before we start. And I think this is especially important for those of you who have purchased tickets for the AMA sessions, since they involve making sure that your video camera and your microphone are working properly. We want to get all of that worked out and out of the way before we start those sessions. And as a matter of fact, before we get going, I encourage you to take a moment to become familiar with the features on the dash. Look at the features and the controls that are available to you. On your right side, you'll see the chat box, and you're quickly going to notice that the newest comments are at the top. During my 2 main presentations, this chat function will really be for all the attendees to share their own reactions with each other, because I'm not really going to be able to engage in the chat room while I'm giving my presentations. But during my interview with Alejandro and during all of our AMA sessions, that chat function will be something that I see as well, and I may very well respond to it. Now, of course, Tracy's going to be in chat during all of the sessions, so she's going to see everything that you say. And keep your eye out for instant polls that will be offered during all of the events. And that's it. I want to thank each of you for being here, and I really want you to enjoy the experience of doing something new, of exploring something important with me, that from everything that those of you who have purchased tickets, doing something new and powerful than ever before. Welcome to what I hope is going to be a very special event. I think it's fair to say that the last few months have brought a new sense of reality to all of us, a sense of change that most likely none of us really thought would come up upon us so quickly, so suddenly. One of the many things that went away during this lockdown, this shutdown of nearly all of the society we were so used to, are conferences. In the UFO field and what we might call the alternative knowledge field, these have always been very important. And think about it. In a world like ours, when there's so much pressure, more now than ever before, for people to conform to certain ways of thinking and certain ways of perceiving the world, those of us who think differently have always received tremendous value from those types of events. In the first place, we get to encounter new research and new ideas about the things that matter to us. Things that, even in the era of incredible information on the web or on YouTube, can be hard to find. It's something that conference goers have known for a long time. Even today, not everything makes it to the web. But also, and for many people, this is even more important, is the chance to connect with other like-minded folks. You go to an event like this and you realize you're not alone. There are others who share your concerns, who share your curiosities, your intense desire to rip through the countless layers of untruth that get between you and unvarnished reality. Yeah, in that regard, there are many others just like you, and they attend events just like this one. Now, during this pandemic, however, we've had to learn new rules, new behaviors, and new coping strategies for all kinds of things. So quickly our world has become virtual in so many ways. And since we have no idea how long it's going to be before we ever get back to a world where you can just drive or fly to a UFO conference, we have this, an exclusive online full-day event, and in case you still don't realize it, a lot of interactivity. The system that we're using is very powerful, it's robust, it's able to handle high bandwidth, and it allows you a genuine chance to interact with other attendees, and also with me. The software that we have allows full chat functionality. It allows the ability to respond to instant polls, which I think is a very cool thing, and also for the exclusive AMA sessions, face-to-face live time with me, or with me and my wife Tracy, or with me and my colleague Alejandro Rojas. And plus, in my view, there's always something exciting about participating in a live event. You never know how it's going to turn out. There's risk, there's the unknown. That's actually a big attraction, in my opinion. Now, a lot of preparation has gone into this event, both from myself in preparing two of the most important presentations I've ever given, and also on the technical end, in which we've tested and gone over everything to make sure it's a smooth experience. But keep in mind something. This is new for us as just like it is for you. We have worked tirelessly to make this a great event, and I think we're going to nail it. But keep in mind, we are all in this together, working our way through the wilderness into something new. Speaking of which, preparing for my presentations has taken me, several weeks. It's prompted me to think about so much of the history of UFOs in a fresh way, but also about the history of our own species. And in thinking about this, I have come to the firm conclusion that there have been a very, very few times in human history that are as profound as what we are all living through now. There's the discovery of fire, there's the creation of art, there's the invention of agriculture, the birth of writing, birth of science, and now this, where we stand today as we move through the 21st century. It is not hype to say this. It's a reality check. The transformation that we are seeing in the very nature of what it means to be a human being, this may be something that you have longed for, or it may be something that you dread. But it is happening. There is not a shred of doubt in my mind. So just take a breath, and stop whatever you're doing or whatever you're thinking about, and reflect on that fact, that you are living through one of the most awe-inspiring and reality-shattering times that human beings have ever experienced. The two presentations I prepared are two pieces that go perfectly together. Each has given me insights into the other. But it has become clear to me that we as a civilization, as a species, are moving fast into something we've never experienced before. Yeah, there have often been periods of change in the past, but nothing, absolutely nothing, is like what we are experiencing now. It's different qualitatively, not just a difference in amount, but in kind. I'll have a lot to say about that in my presentation, but I'm going to leave you with this thought, that it is impossible to understand the presence of other beings here on planet Earth, what we call UFOs or the alien phenomenon, with
Hey, the microphone's on down here, just FYI. Hey, the microphone's on down here?
Just a sec.
The microphone's on down here.
What?
The microphone is on down here, babe.
Well, okay. Oh, don't worry about this coffee. This is fine. We'll get this later.
I love you.
Love you too. We're gonna start, I think.
Yep.
Hello, I think.
I love you guys too.
Oh.
All right. Hello, Mr. Alejandro. Let's go live with the video.
All right.
Turn video on. Hi.
There he is.
Are we
the man
actually
of the
live
day.
with everybody?
We are live. How are you hanging in there? It's been
Great.
a long day for you.
Been happy to be here. I just took my first bathroom break of the day.
Oh my gosh.
That's what happened. We just finished an AMA that went a little over, and I raced off, and we knocked over a cold cup of coffee.
Oh no.
That was here. This is just like the craziest. But no, it's been fabulous. I was telling Tracy or some of the folks in one of our AMAs that I felt really great last night before we went to bed, but then I promptly was not able to sleep at all. And I got a little bit of sleep this morning. So There's that old episode of The Simpsons where Homer eats this chili pepper and goes on this kind of psychedelic trip, and hears the voice of Johnny Cash, who's his coyote spirit guide. And I think I'm kind of hovering in that area right now. So I feel good. Sleep will be good when we're done.
That's hilarious. When we do the UFO Congress, and you've been there backstage and seen me just in that mode, I am usually spent before the event even begins. So I'm running on zero, but that's when some of the funnest stuff happens. Right. So
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We've had a couple of moments. I'm just going to jump in by something that was funny that we both remember when Bob Lazar was at the International Congress. And I'll just tell this really quickly.
You want to share this?
Yes, I do. Is that okay? It
was our most tense moment ever, probably. Yeah,
it was, but we got over it. It was
funny.
Fine.
I like it.
In retrospect, it's hilarious. I did a lecture that day. Lazar was there with George Knapp, and I remember being in there. I had just done my lecture, and I thought, I'm going backstage to see Bob Lazar because I'm a speaker at this conference. I'm important. I'm going to go and I want to meet Bob Lazar. And I was like, so I strode in there, and Lazar and Knapp were back there, and they both recognized me, and George called me over. So I was like, great, everything's cool. Lazar and I shook hands really quickly, and I knew I had to be quick. So I gave my camera to Ryan Sprague, our friend who was there. I said, Ryan, take a picture of us right now. And he was taking his sweet time. That was the thing. That's where the whole thing failed. And he's getting this angle, and you reached over the top and went yoink. And I got so mad. I was like, you took my picture away.
Well, I waited. I was waiting for Ryan. And, and this is what's funny. So back to in my defense a little, we were like so paranoid. We didn't even know. George was so freaked out because we didn't even know if he was going to show. He kept going back and forth. And he even said on stage that, he called like the day before and said, I don't think I can do this. And he put it this way. They told me, they reminded me I signed a contract and I could get sued if I don't show up. And then he went, but they did it in a nice way, which is true. I mean, we had to pull that card. It's one of the rare times.
Yeah, and you told me afterward that you were really obligated to protect Lazar, and there was not supposed to be any people. Yeah, I get all that.
But this was what was funny too, because when he was done, that's when I was going to get my moment to say, hey, do you got some time to take some pictures with people? And we did get that moment. So we got our selfies. He's backstage. And then I run out there to grab people like you, because I felt bad. And I was like, okay, I'm going to grab Richard and some other people. I can make it up to him. So we could, and everybody was gone. I couldn't find literally anybody, not even our staff. So very few people got their selfies, but
it's a funny story.
That was kind of funny. It was funny.
I'll never forget the little yoink moment. That was just classic.
I think you even threatened me.
Did I?
You said you're gonna kick my
butt. Did I do that really?
But I was not. I was that would have been cute though. You and I kind of wrestling in the grass outside.
Yeah, we were like absolutely gone down that road. Everyone wants to see that. Anyway, we got through it. It was good. And actually, I just want to say this one thing. Like over the last several years in particular, especially since TDSA has really come out and made a very big splash in the UFO field, like you find that the UFO community has gotten very polarized over that. And over enough time, I realized like you and I really saw this in a very similar way. I think we both had fairly sympathetic. It's not like we had rose-colored glasses with that organization, but we were not knee-jerk shouting CIA disinformation. And there are a couple of very, very loud voices in the field. They still are doing this, I think. And we just never really felt that way.
And we also had an advantage in a way, of course, you being a historian, and covering all this for so long, and me having a history covering Bigelow and NIDS and the background there, is that at least you and I were able to recognize this isn't just this one guy, Lou Elizondo, coming out, this ex-intelligent guy saying, this is all the secrets. Here's what's going on. Kind of like the Richard Doty thing with one person. This was a group, an organization of many people who we've known for years, interviewed for years, been working in this arena for years. You've kind of talked about some of the remote viewing and how put off and some of that going on. And this was this group of people that had been working on this and were behind this whole thing. So we knew, at least, I think you might have been surprised, just like I was, that I was surprised I never even knew this was happening, that these guys that Bass was related to this Pentagon program or anything. But
I had no idea.
Right. But we knew the players. So we knew it wasn't in a vacuum. And that's what I think was unfortunate. A lot of people really tried to make this, even when this information came out, people like us are sharing it. People tried to make this, no, this is just this one guy, Elizondo, who's coming out and lying to us and all of this. And that just wasn't the case. It was a group of people that we knew for decades, years. George Knapp, who we mentioned,
right.
Bigelow, who had been working on this, that we could confirm that, this is a legit thing.
It's really what I now call the Bigelow crowd, which goes back for decades. And I think around Robert Bigelow, but not solely, but people like Hal Puthoff, people like Dr. Kid Green and John Alexander and Colm Kelleher and a little later on, Eric Davis. And, these people, and there are others as well. The late Edgar Mitchell was absolutely part of that group and they were at various times often employed by Robert Bigelow, who himself is deeply engaged. And so you see this group of people, like they have been this circle, and they're almost, you could say they're related to the legendary aviary.
Right. A lot of them are the aviary guys.
So it's like an informal collection of different people with various types of security clearances who you can tell like they're friends, and they share what information they've been able to share with each other without breaking their security oaths. And they're all kind of working their way through that maze, trying to get to the center. I had my eye on Hal Puthoff early on, mainly because Hal wrote to me in the year 2000 when my first book came out. Like it was brand new. And he actually told me, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, that he bought something like 40 copies of my book to give out to his colleagues, which just made me fall off my chair. Yeah. So once that happened, I began corresponding with him, not surprisingly. And we ended up really liking each other. And I've always liked him. I respect him. And he doesn't tell me everything that I want to know. He's often very careful about what he says. But I will say that over the years, I trust his integrity with me, and I don't think he's a liar. To me, I don't think he's a liar to other people. I think he's like the other ones. He's trying to get to the center, and I think he's got some information, and there's other information that I think he would like to have confirmed. So, so they've been working their way through this whole scenario for years and years. And once they connected with Bigelow, they realized this is a guy with some money who's going to help maybe fund some of this research. And I think that's what it's all about. And now through Bass, through TTSA, we're seeing the same type of iteration with a few new people cycling in, but a lot of the same people. It's quite interesting. It's quite fascinating.
And really talking about the future of ufology, the past, becoming the future in that this group of people that you just talked about, we now know was working with Bigelow for the most part. Not all of these guys. John Alexander wasn't a part of it, but Eric Davis, Hal Puthoff, these guys who had worked with NIDS, some people we heard on the kind of fringe there, like Chris Mellon, who we know has been working with these guys in the background, and Leslie Kane has done some interviews with him to get information out. So, but now these people have kind of created this new reality for us, because if it wasn't their partnership with Tom DeLonge and then Lou Elizondo joining this group, of course, we know behind the scenes now, these guys had been working with Lou Elizondo since 2007, or at least 2010, Lou in particular, but with the Pentagon since 2007. And they've kind of ushered in this new reality, or this new area where we've got, over the last 3 years, regular correspondence or information coming out from the military regarding UFOs. It's all over the place. There's denials and then acceptance and information we never thought would coming out, where, at least Navy is saying, yes, those are our videos, those are unidentified. DR4 is saying, we checked in to see if these videos were released when they shouldn't have been. We confirmed that they were released properly, that they weren't classified information, and that ATIP was a UAP research organization. Yeah. So, and then we have the DoD kind of going back and forth and making different statements all the time, kind of countering their own word, denying a lot of this and then confirming it. But regardless, what this has created is this news cycle. And every time, they say something else, it creates this new news cycle. Just recently with them posting those 3 videos that were in that original New York Times article, or at least 2 of them were in, then Two Stars released the 3rd soon after. That is old news, that happened years ago. But because they're talking about it again, it created big news just a few weeks ago. Yeah. So this is kind of, at least when we talk about the future of ufology, a positive step where we've got a lot more credibility. But how many more news cycles do we got with this, and how much legs does this story still have? What do you think?
Yeah, I want to answer that, but I want to ask you something, because this is actually something that I think is true, but something that I don't think I know every single detail. It's the way that Elizondo was able to get those videos cleared for release back in 2017. I think you were on top of this more than I was, but correct me if I'm wrong. It is my definite impression, just from having looked through some of the emails that existed back in, I think it was August of 2017, before TTSA announced themselves and before the videos were released, that Elizondo was working to get those UAP video released. And he did it in a way that I would characterize as maybe not quite saying sneaky, but definitely very, very quietly, kind of under the radar type of language. So not referring to them as UFO or UAP, and referring to them, I can't remember exactly how he did it, but as kind of just interesting advanced aircraft. And this was how, am I right in understanding this was how he, because I think it was him, I'm sure with some help, was able to get those videos cleared for release. And then that shocked the Navy once they got out. Is that accurate?
It's accurate in that I've asked him these questions directly in interview, these same questions that you just asked me. So I can give you his answer. And to be honest, he does skirt around it a bit. And then I can give you my impression on what he's not saying. So yeah, I did FOIA this along with others, and I've gotten very little information from my FOIAs or correspondence with the DoD. Fortunately, others like John Greenwald or Tim McMillan have gotten more information, and luckily we've gotten our answers that way. But one FOIA they did respond to is when I did ask for that release form that Elizondo filled out to get those videos out, and what it came along with that release form was a lot of that email correspondence back and forth between Lou and the Navy regarding all of this. And so I was able to ask Lou about that. But also earlier on, I asked him, hey, the Washington Post had implied that you kind of snuck those videos out. Is that the case? He says no. He says that although you don't see it in the correspondence, that, you do see that these videos they want for training and to share with third parties that are working with them, is essentially how they put it. I asked, well, you don't use the word, you don't really explicitly say these are unidentified. And he says, true, but that they did know, that people did know. The Navy guys he was talking to did know.
People?
For instance, they knew what he did. They knew what ATIP was, and they knew what he was doing, and they knew what these cases were. To support that, I would reference Robert Powell. Robert Powell was trying to get information on these videos also, and he got wind of all of this from 2007 when one of those videos was released. And then later on in a military site, David Fravor did an interview where he said, this was, and the thing was even called the X-Files. And David Fravor gave up, the whole story about how they chased this Tic Tac. Well, when Robert Powell got a hold of the Navy, he's a researcher, used to be with MUFON, and now he's with the Scientific Coalition for Ufology, SCU. they were like, oh, the Tic Tac. Yeah, they were very aware of the Tic Tac UFO situation, which was really surprising because this is before the New York Times article. So it was a thing. People knew this Tic Tac UFO, kind of a tongue-in-cheek type of thing. So,
yeah.
so they knew. I think that their support there, that they knew what Elizondo worked for and what he was doing. Now, Elizondo says in those emails, "I'm just going to share this with certain third parties," but they essentially said, if you get rid of the metadata on there, share it with whoever you want. And he said, well, I don't know if I want to do that, but eventually they got back with him. They stamped this form, and this form does say, I'm not using the exact word, but essentially cleared for public release. And Elizondo's argument is, if you look at this DD 1910 or the DOPSR procedures and the instructions, which you can download, and I've seen, they say essentially, once you get that release, it's your responsibility to get us the material, argue why you want it released and that it can be released. Once it is released, it's your responsibility to disseminate it.
Right.
Which he did.
That's right.
He gave that to Bass. He probably gave it to the Stars, and which was it within his rights to do. And then other people started to ask, well, those weren't intended to share with the public. And even the DOD had mentioned this. They even had kind of inferred that he did something wrong, broke some rules. And they still infer that. Even recently, when they released those videos, they said, this is the first time they've actually been released to the public. And, well, they haven't been clear. How was what Luis Elizondo did in the beginning not proper?
Yeah, right.
So
exactly.
We haven't heard that from them. So we'll see what happens. The Air Force, like I said, they did their investigation. They found, no, these were released. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with the release of these videos. So there's definitely games being played. But this kind of goes back to how things are so complicated. And even when you have people like Hal Puthoff or Eric Davis, who have been working on government contracts for decades, Puthoff even working on these original remote viewing contracts with the CIA and the Stanford Research Institute. It doesn't mean they're in the know for everything, nor does it mean that they, everybody's in the know for what they're doing either. Things are so compartmentalized. There's so much going on that the left hand really doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And it's just much more complicated. And when we see this infighting, for instance, which is kind of, we've now gotten some behind the scenes and some correspondence where really the DOD, the people who've been wrong, are taking over control of responding to FOIA requests and everything regarding to ATIP. And then there's people like Tyler Rogaway, who writes for the War Zone, and he's a career defense guy. He's like, he wrote an article, look, I work with these press offices on a daily basis. Never have I gotten stonewalled or disrespected in the manner that I am from the DOD regarding ATIP and all of these files. So there is a lot of weirdness going on in the background regarding, and I think it's regarding optics, and they just didn't expect this story to get as big as it was, is probably what it is. Part of it as well. So they're behind the gun, and now their credibility's hurt. And I think that it is an issue, and I think it'll continue to be an issue because it seems behind the scenes there are a lot more people paying attention to what's going on here. Why are these guys getting defamed? Meanwhile, the media is out here barely even paying attention to the naysaying, DOD, and really listening to the firsthand witnesses, which is much more exciting to hear from a jet fighter pilot who chased these things.
Absolutely.
So there are questions going on in the background regarding all that.
Well, thanks for clarifying that a bit. It's what I had suspected. I think Elizondo really deserves a lot of credit for what he did, and he's been raked over the coals by so many people. But if it were not for him, we would not have these videos out there. That's obvious.
Mm-hmm. And he hurt his career. He hurt his his retirement, his income. I mean, I don't think people even know how damaging this has been to his family and his lifestyle, actually, to get this information out. He's kind of like, we had J. Allen Hynek, Nick Pope, and now Luis Elizondo, a bunch of guys who worked inside of the government looking into this stuff, discovered there's something to it, and then really put everything on the line to try to get this information out.
Right. It
Nick
just
Pope, I guess, didn't have as much to lose, but sorry. But
well,
the other
it
guys
offended
did.
my sense of justice to see him getting ripped the way that some people did. But anyway, thank you for pointing that out. And I can't even remember what you were going to ask me now.
Oh, that's okay.
When I sidetracked us.
No problem. I guess, you know, there's been a lot of news cycles around this story, the ATIP and the TPSA information. Do you think it still has legs? Do you see how much further do you think will this go?
I've wondered, I bet we both have wondered, like how we're talking about TTSA, like what is their lifespan? How long can they even exist? I've talked with a couple of people who are in it or associated with it, and the impression that I come away with is I don't know if they believe that this organization is going to last indefinitely or even more than a couple of years. Like it could be that they're gone, like that they just don't exist anymore. Some of the members are kind of advanced in years. I mean, Hal Puthoff's in his 80s, and I don't know about the other people and their commitment. I know that they're frustrated with the treatment that they've gotten in the media, so maybe they won't do this anymore. But in terms of the news cycle, it's quite obvious that 90+% of what we're seeing in the news media on UFOs these last few years is because of them. I mean, I would love to say that's because of me, or you'd love it because it's because of you, but we have to be honest here and say that it's To the Stars Academy by this singer of a pop band, Blink-182, Tom DeLonge, who made it happen, and the people that he had behind him. And so they've been able to generate, honestly, an unbelievable amount of media coverage on this subject that no one would have expected a few years ago. So can it last? Well, I think it can, even if they're not around, because there's a lot of things going on now. As one person said to me relating to the Wilson leak, I'm not going to give his name up, but he just said, it's more toothpaste out of the tube. And I think that's the era that we're in. We're in an era where there are a number of, we've had some very good forward motion in the public domain on the UFO issue. And there are a number of behind the scenes energized researchers who are doing deep dives into this phenomenon. And I don't know how true or not the rumors are, but I've heard what I think is a credible rumor that there may be a mainstream treatment of the Wilson document, which I have been talking about for the past year since it was leaked in early June of a year ago.
What do you mean by treatment? Coverage or a Blue Book type television show? Media news coverage? A serious corporate media dive into it. I know there have been a couple of attempts that started and were stopped. I know of at least 2 instances in which I guess we could say mainstream journalists try to go in and we're not able to go in any further. Now, privately, you and I talked about this the other day, and we can revisit that. But basically, all the people involved in that, from Dr. Eric Davis and Admiral Thomas Wilson, they're all denying, and they will continue to deny. And anyone or not going on the record.
They will not go on the record. Very, very quickly, for those people who don't know what the heck I'm talking about, a year ago, a 15-page document was leaked. And we can call it variously the Wilson document or the core secrecy document. It was an interview done that I will just go on the record and say, I know this is a legit document. I was shown this document back in 2006 by an absolutely impeccable source close to the action. Eric Davis, scientist, interviewed former Admiral Thomas Wilson about Wilson's failed attempt in 1997 to get into access to a special access program dealing with ET, reverse engineering ET technology. This is when Wilson was vice head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And right after that, he became head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs. So he was a powerful guy in the Clinton administration White House. And he learned about a black budget ET program, tried to get access to it, and was denied. He was afforded a meeting face-to-face with the program manager, the security manager, and the corporate attorney of that program. No one knows exactly, but it's betting money's on that it was Lockheed. And Wilson, they said, look, the only reason we even met with you basically is because we want to know how you learned about us. You're not getting into the program. We decide who's in. You can holler and scream all you want, but you're not getting in. And Wilson had to suck it up and had to play ball, and he wasn't happy about it. 5 years later, the Bigelow crowd sent Eric Davis to interview him. Why? Here's why. Because in 1997, when Wilson started his sojourn, he was triggered into this by Dr. Stephen Greer. Stephen Greer was making the rounds in Washington, D.C. He had astronaut Edgar Mitchell with him. And the end result of that is clearly that this came back through Mitchell to Robert Bigelow's crowd, and they learned about it. And within 5 years, they arranged Eric Davis to interview Wilson. That's clearly what happened. And Davis came away with basically a home run. He had 15 pages of detailed notes. Now, I was shown this in 2006, and I've respected the person all along and not given up this individual's identity explicitly. People can try to figure it out. Maybe they'd be right. Maybe they're wrong. But the fact is, I can tell you, all the people in that circle, they all know that that document is legitimate because they've all told me, the ones that I've spoken to. And other highly credible journalists all have known about it as well. But what I can say is that at least I have heard, and I don't know this directly, that there may be a treatment of this, a journalistic treatment, and I would like to see that.
I've heard of people thinking about taking a stab at it, but that's what's rough about the Wilson document, is that when no one's going on the record, you know, what can you do with it? What can you even chase down? Otherwise, you can only maybe interview some third-party people on their feelings.
The era that we're in now, though, Alejandro, like, do we have to get, like, if you're doing an investigation of criminal activity, are you going to expect a criminal just to say, oh, yeah, I did that crime? Like, obviously not. So in my view, responsible journalists have to be able to deal with that reality that that they've got a subject that these people involved are not going to admit to, but that doesn't make it not worthy of journalistic investigation or analysis.
Well, I disagree in this case, especially because, and if you at least had a witness that was willing to go on the record, but you've got literally no one. So I don't know, even myself or yourself, where would you go? Who would you be able to talk to? Bigelow isn't going to go on the record. No. Davis isn't going to go on the record. I've already asked. You've probably asked. Putoff isn't going to go on. None of these guys are going to go on the record.
Yeah, I've almost begged, and like they're just not going to do it.
Yeah, so it's hard
other than throw them under the bus, which I don't want to do, and I don't think I will do. So it's really difficult to get them to want to go on the record about it. And the word that I got is just like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I know, and a lot of the people, maybe even these journalists who have sources, I know their sources for the most part will confirm information, but are very skeptical of the topic and don't really want to touch the topic.
Right.
So they won't go on the record. So even if they can say a source says this or that, which the New York Times had quite a bit of. I mean, at least, the original New York Times article allegedly had DOD sources that we still don't know who they were, and they're not giving them up, including allegedly independent sources who gave them the videos. They say that was not Lou Elizondo who gave them those videos.
Oh, yes, that's right. Well, we'll see what happens with this, and if it comes to anything, or if it doesn't. I'm hoping that something does happen. If not, then... But I think that there are opportunities for UFO journalism and UFO research moving forward. I would like to see that. There's so many opportunities internationally that just we have not taken advantage of. I mean, we're in an era now of Google Translate. We're able to communicate with people who speak other languages far more effectively than ever before. And for my part, I've tried on a limited extent to try to engage other UFO researchers from around the world to get a sense of what's going on in their part of the world. But there's really not any kind of substantial, in my view anyway, organized effort other than in North America, a little bit in South America, a little bit in Europe, to get hold of this phenomenon. China has UFO research, but it's absolutely controlled by the Chinese government. They've got their hand in every UFO group that exists in that country. So it's really tough, and there's a real gap and a lacking, but an opportunity for more sharing of data. In my opinion, we're not really going to make a lot of progress without global data. Right now, it's all North America's game and a little bit of Europe and some South America. We need more, seems to me.
Yeah. I do want to answer at least a couple of questions from the chat to clarify, and please jump in if I missed stuff around ATIP and To the Stars. So first of all, somebody was asking, are they going to release more classified information? Lou Elizondo has said from the beginning he will never release unclassified information. He doesn't consider himself a whistleblower, although I kind of debate that, because he did share information people didn't want out and were expecting to get out, and they certainly are not happy that it's out. But so no, in fact, not only that, Lou doesn't want to share any information that he doesn't own. So even if he knows of unclassified information, if he says he works behind the scenes to prompt those people to release that information, the owners of that information, but if they won't, he's not going to step on their toes to get that information out. Although George Knapp has gotten a few leaks on some of this information here and there.
Oh, yes, George. Yeah, he's very important in a lot of this. He's got a lot of access. He's got total access to Bigelow, of course, and pretty much everyone in the TTSA organization. And he's willing to talk. He's willing to, do some really genuine investigation and come up with new information.
Yeah, he's one of the guys I keep telling, he's one of the main guys to watch with all of this stuff. And when it comes to the Stars, someone was asking, are they just an entertainment company? And there is a lot of confusion about this. And in fact, I had kind of a Twitter rant where I was like, guys, I think people are really confused about who you are or what you do. And they responded. In fact, Chris Mellon did a whole AMA. Tom DeLonge said, well, here's what we are and here's what we do. And I'm like, well, I understand that. I think others don't.
Yes.
They're not just entertainment. The idea is they want to do UFO research. They have materials that they want to investigate and cases that they want to look into. But you need money to do that. You have to be a viable corporation. How do they want to do that? Making money through entertainment, getting people interested in the topic that way. That's Tom DeLonge's area, which I know for some researchers that leaves a bad taste in their mouth. They don't want something kind of over sensationalized and fictionalized, like maybe that Project Blue Book television show, but that's entertainment. And then there's also the technology arm. And this is where I think there's some confusion, because he keeps saying we're working on this technology and that technology. We're working with the Army on this or that. What they're doing there is they want to get contracts with the government, developing technologies. People like Steve Justice, who work for Lockheed Skunk Works, that's their wheelhouse. That's where they work. They've got great connections. And of course, if they can get these contracts and get this viable company on its feet, then they do hope to do research. However, one important thing going on behind the scenes that people don't see is this huge momentum where they are contacting and they're in regular contact with their contacts inside the whole military industrial complex, loosening and moving wheels to get information out, to get stuff out. And really, it's them massaging these different areas that has gotten this movement that we've seen lately. In fact, the DoD has even admitted there is a group that keeps looking at the UAPs, just like Elizondo has said. And it is kind of a multi-functional group with lots of different moving parts. So we've kind of got this admittance that, they are looking into UFOs or UAPs. So that's kind of the background.
Yeah. We don't have to talk about TTSA all night, but I guess I would just say I look at them. I've seen them nearly from the beginning as a faction, as a faction from within the defense community, the defense scientific community, that have a shared interest in the UFO subject. And that's really what they are. I remember chatting briefly with Ryan Bender of Politico, who wrote one of the early articles on this, of course, and he's been on top of it. And I just offered my take on them as a faction that's got allies and enemies within the Pentagon. He said, absolutely. He said, more enemies than allies, but they do have friends who are there to try to help them. And I think this is what you're talking about. Like, they'll massage those relationships, as it were, to try to get people to help them out. But they've also got factions within the Pentagon who absolutely are opposed to what they've been trying to do. So that, I think, it could be the tragedy of that organization, that they fold one day and the UFO community has no idea, like, of appreciation of what just happened there. And my fear is that may happen.
So I guess that is the next big question in the future of ufology. First, very simply, my question to you would be, do you have hope? Do you think there's a positive future for ufology?
Yes, I do. I mean, to me, everything is complicated because ufology is not separate from the future of our society in general. And earlier today, I've been talking. I mean, my first lecture was on what I firmly now believe is a transition to something very different, and I just call it the transhumanist stage. I don't know if there may be a better name for it, but we're moving to a new form of human social organization, and ultimately, I think it will include different biological outcomes for us as well. But we're moving into something very different, and ufology is not disconnected from that. The future, it will be a near future of very, very strong AI, very, very strong computing, what kind of instant messaging and social communication are we going to have in that world? What will be the ability for ordinary citizens to get information out that we don't yet understand? What tools will be available for ordinary UFO researchers to detect UFOs? We've got someone on our website who's developing some really interesting ideas along that way to get that type of information out via new types of interconnectivity. So I mean, I think that there are a lot of opportunities for us, and for me, it really comes down to finding a way. This is going to be the toughest part, and Tom DeLonge tweeted some hints about this a year ago. Finding a way to get through the legal structure, a system of what I often call legal illegality, where, and again, I'm returning to the theme of the Wilson document, where you've got private black budget organizations that are beyond formal U.S. government authority, but have control over this secret, at least it seems to me. And they are absolutely being protected by the laws of the United States. Basically, what I see it is the U.S. government is serving as their security force. So our tax dollars are paying for the security force of private contractors who I believe have genuine access to this UFO technology. So breaking through to that is the key. And how that is done is going to be a real challenge. So A, we need really great FOIA researchers and document experts. And B, we need really good journalists who are able to ferret things out. I don't know how many more leaks are going to occur, like with the Wilson document. That came out because Edgar Mitchell died, and those papers, his private papers, that was made public, and a couple of other papers were made public of his. And from what I understand, there's not a whole lot else of great value in that collection. So I don't know how many more opportunities there are, but that's, for me, it's a combination of scientific research and political research. And I think both have to be done, like really good journalism and really good science. I think it's don't know how successful we're going to be.
Yeah, and that's the real hard part, because I see ufology didn't change overall as much as I guess I had hoped it would with all of this new information came out. And you and I talked about this over the years. There's just kind of a major rejection. But there's also, when you and I guess, first were doing conferences and stuff, it was a very small community, but it's changed. And I think your first lecture today really outlined, how kids are using media, how everybody's getting online, how things are really changing culturally.
Yeah.
And MJ Banias wrote a book, I think it was called UFO People. And I think, he tried to look at, is there a UFO community? No, because it's just so disparate. There's so many different people with interests that are so different across the board. For instance, there's different Facebook groups where there's thousands and thousands of people that are discussing and looking into all of this stuff. And then totally separate from them, there's UFO Twitter, where there's different people that are looking into it. Then there's people that subscribe to different YouTube groups or subscribe to different individuals. So there's these disparate groups all over the place. And I guess what you're talking to, which I agree 100%, is that we really need to develop this kind of these journalists, these people that are plugged into the mainstream, who know how to kind of loosen up and get this information out, like the guys in TTSA. But unfortunately, it's a really small group. It's grown a little bit bigger because of all of this recent news,
right?
But not that big. So that's what's really scary for me. If To the Stars doesn't make it to kind of, and they haven't really, and Bigelow didn't ever do this either. They didn't really play a big, they didn't tackle the PR world. They didn't tackle the public and get out there into the media to really champion this issue. There's a group I'm involved with at Scientific Coalition for UFOs. I have some hope there, but still it's just small. It's growing. Nobody's really going to listen to a small group like that. They're going to listen to a rock star and a, jet fighter pilots and a former intelligence guy.
Yeah.
But without that, which really isn't happening so much, I mean, we are going to have a season 2 of Unidentified. We'll see what happens with that. But I'm fearful that won't happen. And if it doesn't, it's just going to be the same old stuff. You're
fearful that season 2 of Unidentified won't happen? Is that right?
Oh, no, that I guess, no, there won't be momentum. There won't be, if To the Stars doesn't make it, for instance, if they don't really pick up the mantle. And I think there's historically information. I keep saying we need a SETI of UFOs. SETI in the 90s was very fringe. People used to make fun of them, searching for aliens. It was kind of a joke. But because they tackled it every time, they have scientists on board, Sesh Sostak in particular, Jill Tarter, Frank Drake. Some of these guys have been in the forefront and not shy to challenge scientists when they question them. And now, there are periods of times where everything SETI does is news. And now NASA is a search for extraterrestrial life organization. That's a lot of what they're doing. So that can change. And I think we have an opportunity here.
Yeah.
It's just somebody's got to pick up that mantle.
I agree. Honestly, a lot of the, you mentioned entertainment a little while ago. And, I'm friendly with the guys who created the TV series Project Blue Book. I went on actually to help consult for a couple of the on a limited basis. And I believe they were dedicated to trying to create a very viable show. I know you interviewed them as well, David O'Leary and Sean Jablonski, the showrunner. Mm-hmm. They're great guys. And they caught so much hell. They caught so much hell from UFO researchers and the community because they've fictionalized certain genuine UFO cases, and that is absolutely true. Like they had to fictionalize it, they had to sex some of it up, they had to make it TV friendly, and that's the name of the game. But what I see is that shows like Ancient Aliens, even more significantly, have actually had a very big impact on the general public. And from my perspective, and I'm guessing from yours, over the last 20 years, that type of impact has been significant. And if you change the culture, then I think, we've got a good chance of changing the politics that are connected to that. So I think one thing that TTSA did that's permanent, in my view, is they made UFOs kind of respectable, at least ish, to talk about publicly now. Because again, toothpaste out of the tube. They got the Navy. It was them. The Navy admitted, yep, we have these encounters. We don't know what they are. Like they said it. It's out. It's done. The Pentagon made these statements. So it's like no one can hide behind the lack of reality. So it's definitely a major move forward that's not going to be followed by a retreat. I can't see that. It's been made. So I see it as hopeful, and Many years ago, I speculated. When I first got into theories of artificial intelligence about 20 years ago, around the time that I wrote my first book, I wondered, will future highly advanced AI and technology that we develop be the thing that forces a genuine disclosure? Will we wake up one morning and talk to our super intelligent laptops that have an IQ of 500 and say, hey, tell me about UFOs? And your laptop says, oh, well, as a matter of fact, my assessment of all the evidence shows that there are 37 species that are actively here. But honestly, like I wondered back in 01, 02, like, could that be possible? And I guess what I would say now is that the technologies we're developing, even the ones I can't even imagine what they are yet, but that actually can provide a breakthrough through this logjam of what I believe are lies, official lies, told to us by supposedly responsible authorities. And as I was saying during one of the private AMAs, it offends I don't get offended easily, but it offends my sense of justice to be spoon-fed BS like I'm 5 years old on the UFO subject by, an official establishment. Like I find that offensive. So I don't like to be lied to. And I don't think anyone watching this wants to be lied to. And I think that we'll have new tools. I don't know what they all are, but I believe that we're developing them. And in the next decade, even, there may be some unexpected things that happen. What TTSA was able to do really, in a sense, was only possible because we're now well into the 21st century. I don't think they could have done what they did in the 1990s or 80s or 70s. I just don't think it would have been possible. But we're having a different kind of conversation now, and they have become possible. And organizations like WikiLeaks were not possible until we reached a certain infrastructure, critical mass, but then they became possible. So I think there are going to be continued developments that will allow for new opportunities. And I don't know what they are, but I really believe that will happen.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, WikiLeaks played a big role in a lot of this. When Tom DeLonge came out and he's like, I'm working with, these insiders and NASA and the government, and everybody's like, yeah, sure you are, dude. And then the WikiLeaks came out and they showed that John Podesta himself was setting up meetings with them, with Spielberg and others. So that actually did help. And I do want to at least address, there's so much confusion about Bigelow, and there's totally a lot of misinformation in the chat right now regarding the background of Bigelow and some of these guys and
I guess
the aviary. Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate. So I guess
there it is.
To address that, though, I guess to just take one step and how it applies to today. You talked about how, we really need to get more global and really MUFON, for example, New Fork. These are the two largest organizations collecting reports. MUFON's doing more examination of cases. Bigelow, which makes sense. When Bigelow got the contract to work on with OSAP at the time, that the Pentagon, they said, hey, we should work with MUFON to investigate cases. I was in some of these high-level meetings at the time with MUFON at the time, and that's what that was about, which makes perfect sense. I mean, if I was given a bunch of money, I would say, hey, MUFON's already on the ground doing this. Maybe we should hook up with them. The partnership broke down, but really there was no nefarious stealing of any information. In fact, I personally have written stories about the best cases and all of the research related to those during that Bigelow era, and there were some really good cases. But that is the sort of thing that happened for a small period of time. You had Bigelow getting MUFON some money. You had a couple of people that were full-time. The breakdown came where it just wasn't enough. I mean, everybody else is volunteer. I remember a couple situations where Bigelow's like, we got to get people on the ground. We got to get out to this rural area where there's this case. And MUFON's like, well, everybody's working till the weekend, nobody can get away until maybe next week. And even then, everybody has to clear their schedules. It's not that easy.
Didn't Bigelow have his own people, though, going into some of these cases independently of MUFON? Isn't that right?
Well, this is the situation where they had these independent people and they're like, well, let us roll. But the agreement was, no, MUFON is a boots on the ground. And that's where it came into the thing where Bigelow's like, well, we've got people that can roll right now. We can't wait another week or 2 weeks. And there were a couple instances where Bigelow did roll and their guys were able to get there first. And that's the nature of it. What are you going to do? But it would take kind of an effort like that. And we still have the resource problem. I mean, I think for a short window there, because of those cases I'm talking about where they got to do, for instance, a car that was magnetized after an object hovered over it and the car stalled out. That's one of the really exciting cases that had occurred. But without the sort of resources to do the right sort of investigation and analysis, there's not much that can happen there. Right. So hopefully with technology getting better, and usually that means the tools you need getting cheaper, that can happen in the future.
Well, we'll have access to whatever off-the-shelf technology there is. Usually not a lot of money. So there is going to be hampered. And the other thing, you mentioned MUFON, which when you and I met, it was 2002. I'm sure you remember that. That was in Rochester, New York at the MUFON International Conference. Wasn't it? Or am I getting myself mixed up here?
Well, I can't remember the first time we met. I knew we met in Laughlin for the UFO Congress, actually.
Were you at the 2002 conference?
I wasn't at that one, but it might have been the next one, because after 2000, around that time, I was in Denver, and we started doing all of them in Denver.
Yes, that's probably
so that could have been the time.
Anyway, the thing is, I know you were actively in MUFON, and the thing is about MUFON that I've spent many years just complaining about MUFON. Like, it's true, especially in the era before Jan Harzan was running it. MUFON to me was like a big black hole, just sucking data and not giving much back to the world. And I, had very strong feelings about some of the old time leadership of MUFON, not John Schuessler, who I always liked, but some of the other folks that I frankly did not trust. And I thought, you've got a lot of Navy intelligence. You've got a lot of people who, I don't know what their agendas are. And so MUFON to me seemed like an organization that had a lot of hype, but was doing a whole lot of nothing and not providing much back. I don't think that is the case anymore. I think the sense I have of MUFON is that, particularly with Jan Harzan running it, that he's genuinely trying. And I don't know if I would agree with every single decision that I know that he's made, but I do believe that he's really been trying. And I think he's the best director they've ever had. So in terms of what MUFON's importance is significant, because they're the only major organization that I'm aware of, civilian group, that's actually on the ground investigating UFO sightings. There's really no one else doing it. And if we don't have an organization doing that, then all we have are these claims and raw reports, and you can go to the National UFO Reporting Center and read, but none of those are investigated. I mean, at least MUFON is trying to do some investigation, and sometimes they do a pretty good job of it. I mean, I think that's really what we can say. But I don't know about the future of that. It just seems I want them to remain and to keep going, but frankly, we need so much more of that. We need that ramped up. And do you see that happening? Because I sure don't.
I don't. And you know what? I feel, because I've been with MUFON for quite a while, and I feel like every director of MUFON that I've worked with has been good, just as good as Jan, and all of them have had their hearts in the right place and trying to do the best thing.
Yes.
It's a volunteer organization, and everybody's so busy, and the guys at the top, a bunch of engineers essentially, and one guy from intelligence, Tom Dooley, worked in intelligence, but they had all worked together because they were in the, that's eventually defense and aerospace arena. And, they've even, for the longest time, they had to throw their money in to keep this thing going. That's why they were so happy when Bigelow offered to sponsor, for a period of time, what was going on. And now MUFON's doing a little better in that they've figured out how to have some other outlets to make money, but still it's not close to the amount of money you would need to do real investigations or research. And it is unfortunate. And so it kind of comes back to, I guess, my next question for you. was that in your last lecture, you talked a lot about kind of your feelings of what the research has indicated is going on as far as alien agendas or visitations and those sort of things. I mean, it's sort of, I would argue, speculative, but are we going to be able to get over that hill to move from, being able to really establish more information about what's going on as opposed to just kind of, reviewing anecdotal and kind of historical information?
Well, I know there's one study. I didn't even know how much I'm supposed to be talking about this or not. Maybe you can tell me, maybe you know, but there's at least one study going on that I have heard about. I don't even have the direct data. That is a study of apparent experiencers and looking at their genetics. Are you aware of this?
I am aware of this. And in fact, I think we can share because they've shared, Jacques Vallée shared some information about it, Kit Green, and in particular, Gary Nolan, I think, who is really a guy to watch, a very important scientist out of Stanford, I think. And he's gotten to the point where he's got so much street cred where he says he no longer fears really full head-on paranormal sort of investigations.
I plan to chat with him soon. We've communicated, and yes, he's very great. And he's very successful. But they're doing it. Yeah, they've done, or they are conducting, I don't know where they are in this, a study of people who've had either up close UFO experiences with craft or apparent abductions, or if they are credibly have those experiences. And the attempt is to, particularly, I guess, through the key of epigenetics, where we now understand that our genetics do change due to the experiences that we have. Like, I call it Lamarck's revenge, if anyone knows Gustave Lamarck from the 19th century. Anyway, epigenetics is kind of a way into this subject by which, if they're looking for like a UFO marker, I guess you could say, or an alien experience marker. I don't know if there is one, but it's an interesting idea. And
yeah, I know kind of the flip side is, does this marker, did they have this prior to the experience, or is this something they developed afterwards?
And does the marker exist at all? But I mean, I know they're looking into it, and I would like to know what their results are. I actually don't know their results. I don't know if you know.
Not really. I know people like I who've interviewed him, like Danny Silva has gotten quite a bit of information out. He's a researcher who runs a blog people can look up, and he had a good article written by someone else in there that really looked into, I think that has the most detail, but they're still looking into it. And I don't think they'll share information unless they really find something. But at least in the past, Gary Nolan's been really good at, once his investigation is done, sharing that publicly, even if people are disappointed in the results, because thus far, his investigations around the mummified bodies that have been found in Peru and elsewhere have, showing them to be terrestrial, human, but and people, of course, get upset about that. There's been times where he wasn't sure, and he shares that information, but finds more information to shed more light. But
to answer your question,
I'm confident we will get it once it comes out, once he's done.
Yeah, good. I am too, actually. To go back to your question, like, how would one follow through on the hypothesis that I put forward? That there are human-looking non-humans that are here, or human-looking aliens, whatever. I don't know. Like, I don't know. Do you force people to take a blood test, a genetic test? Is that what this is about? Sometimes you could speculate, is there a behind-the-scenes covert effort in the intelligence community to find these people out? Like, this is all spy novel stuff, but what if it's true? If you are in a responsible position and you know this is true, or you believe this is true, you would want to find out who they are. And I remember I had a conversation with Nick Redfern, who's a great researcher. One of the best. And Nick's had stories like this of human-looking non-humans. And on one occasion, he definitely came across a story where within the UK military, the British military, there was a conversation about the difficulty in dealing with these human-looking non-humans. It's a story, but I think he stands by it. So if that were the case, you'd want to find a way to do it. And how would you do it without them knowing you're doing it? Because obviously, if they're infiltrated, I mean, it just gets crazy. It's almost like a sci-fi series that was made for TV, but it could be real. But I don't know how. I don't have the answer to what you're asking, and some smart person could come up with some ideas. I don't know what they are. But I think that's true. I think that is true.
And I guess, because that kind of comes back to the hope when it comes to the field of ufology, being hopeful that there can be answers, or things might just remain, fairly stagnant for a long period of time. We've definitely gone through many years of that. In a way, I guess you and I have been able to take advantage of that in some ways.
Well, there's one good thing. There's more to ufology than just disclosure. Like when Philip Klass was around, he's the great UFO skeptic and had the gift of being able to really annoy all the genuine UFO researchers. But he had something called I think he called it his UFO curse. And the curse, he said, was, if you're a believer in UFOs, he said, by the time you die, you won't know any more than you know now. That's the curse. And I think, classic Klass, he got it all wrong. He got it wrong on two levels. A, I think we do know more than we've known in the past. I think we are making progress. But B, my feeling is this sounds corny as anything, but the journey is the thing. It's like, that's the reward. I've spent 25 years in this. You spent at least 25, I think, or a long time in this field. And you get a lot out of it. Like you get a tremendous depth of understanding of the world that certainly would not have come to me in any other way. It was like there's different tools that can wedge open a door that's slammed shut. But for me, it was UFOs. It was recognizing, once I pried that open just enough, I realized there were many other elements of this world that I thought that I believed in my youthful naivete that turned out not to be true. And so the UFO subject really was an opener for me. It was an enabler, and I'm thankful for it. So that's the thing. Like, in my opinion, like I said, I don't like being lied to. I don't like when my government lies to me. I don't like when corporations hide truth from me. And so I would like for all of that to come out. But I also feel that the very fact of having been diving into the subject for so long has been incredibly rewarding and enriching in my world, in my life. And I can't even express how lucky I feel that I've been able to and continue to do this. So, and I wouldn't want to do anything else. I'm still fascinated by the subject, and I actually don't expect that I will have all of the answers I want, by the time I check out. I just don't think that. And honestly, I'm okay with that. I want to learn as much as I can learn and enjoy the ride.
Speaking of somebody who's been in this field for a long, long time, and like many people before him, will probably not get all the answers that he wants. This question keeps getting asked a lot. And I mean, it represents a lot of misunderstanding about some of these people and organizations. But here's the question. Jacques Vallée isn't a U.S. citizen, and yet he was brought well into the aviary, the working group, etc., with John Alexander, Bigelow, Kit Green, Hal Puthoff, Pandolfi, and others. What is your understanding of how he was admitted into the inner circle to the point that they talked to him enough that they could, that he could write all he has written, especially in Forbidden Science?
Well, we should ask Vallée. I don't think he would have a problem with answering that, but I'll give you my best answer. I didn't know he wasn't at least a dual citizen, though. I have to confess, he's still a French citizen. But Vallée, came over to work with Hynek. Now, how that happened, that's an interesting thing to ask. How in the mid-'60s, Jacques Vallée was a young man, but he was able to hook up with Alan Hynek, and they became fast friends. That I know. And, well, Vallée ended up, he started out, he wrote actually 2 really good books on ufology, Anatomy of a Phenomenon, particularly, I think it was 1965. And if anyone goes back to read that book, they'll find It's actually one of the finest UFO books of that decade. It's a really good book. Everyone talks about Passport to Magonia and some of his later ones, but his very first book is a great book. And so he really established his credibility right out of the gate with that. And then
he helped the French get their program started, Japan. I mean, he helped Claude O'Hare do a study on UFOs that led to the beginning of Japan, the French.
Yeah, the good thing about Valet is that he's just so damn smart. Yeah. I mean, he's clearly of a high order of intelligence, and he belongs in those circles. Like, for those people, like, he knew Hynek, he knows the field. He's a genuine intellectual with the UFO subject. Mm-hmm. Whatever one thinks about Valet, he's a true heavy-duty thinker who has come up with quite a few really fresh, original perspectives on the subject. I don't know if I agree with all of them, but to me, what his value has been is in jarring open some really fresh perspectives on ufology. And he's always thoughtful. So I think that's what it was. And he's, I think it's his initial book, his work with Hynek, and the fact that he's just a smart guy. It's not surprising at all that, and the aviary is not an official anything. It's an informal collection of guys. They were given the name by Bill Moore, the researcher who was researching all. He was diving in and looking into all of these guys with government connections who clearly knew a lot about UFOs. And in his conversations with Jamie Chandray, they were so spooked on the phone, they gave all of these people bird names. And Moore quipped, well, they're the aviary. Mm-hmm. And that's literally, so like, you could be in the aviary and not even know you're in the aviary.
Which some of them were, because a lot of them, from my understanding, were people they wanted to get in contact with, but wouldn't, in some cases, particularly John Alexander, stay flat out, even though he's considered an aviary, he never wanted to give them the time of day. He didn't feel they were credible. And in my opinion, I think he turned out to be right.
Well, I thought Alexander actually, I once asked Putoff privately, is like, why do you even bother with this guy? I've had my fill of John Alexander over the years. And, but I think, Alexander knows Bigelow quite well. And he was, I believe he was associated with NIDS back, at least in the early days. So he's part of it too. But the thing is, what we call the aviary is, I think really you can say they were a loose collection of guys who they kind of knew each other. They were friends. A fellow named Ernie Kellerstrauss, who no one even talks about anymore. And he was really one of the early leaders of that group. Kellerstrauss apparently worked out at Nevada. He was with the Air Force, had a lot of information about what was going on there, at least rumors and leaks. And they collected around him and other people, Kit Green and Hal Puthoff and Alexander. I think Alexander's nickname in the aviary was Penguin, if I'm not mistaken, or Chickadee, one or the other, and on and on and on. Robert Collins is Condor and so forth. But they're not like an organization, a formal thing. They're a collection. So I think that's really what we're talking about. And Valet works over in Palo Alto. He's out there and a lot of the remote viewing people there, and they're sort of connected to this. So I think it's kind of an informal thing. They're just with clearances.
Yeah, and Valet worked with, like you said, he worked with Hynek, so he's kind of been there from the beginning and kind of been up there at that kind of legendary status with Hynek. So he's played an important figure, and he's done venture capitalism. He is a scientist. He's got amazing connections, and that's really anybody at that level is going to be someone that some of these people are going to want to converse with. And you don't have to be that incredibly special. You and I get to talk to these guys too. So Valet's just someone who I think is a no-brainer. If anybody interested in this field, especially if you're at that high level, that's someone that you're going to want to be in contact with.
If you stay in this little field of ours long enough, and if you've got any bit of ability, like at some point, people will come to you, because there's actually so few public people who are really engaged in this. There's a lot of researchers out there, don't get me wrong, and a lot of them are way more deep and insightful than I am, but I'm very public, and I put my ideas out there publicly often. So that's just how it is. And that's obviously the case with you. And so when you put yourself out there publicly and you've got something behind you, people will come to you.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned something earlier about kind of disclosure and alien disclosure, this type of thing. I've noticed, and I am choosing my words purposefully here, that, you know, a lot of UFO groups that start in whatever fashion, whether it's a meetup or it's an online organization on some social media platform, they almost always kind of devolve into a UFO alien disclosure activism type of group. Have you ever considered yourself kind of a disclosure activist at all?
No, not really. My pal Steve Bassett has always tried to get me to go that direction. Although he'll always say, Richard, you're the historian, not a historian, the historian. So don't do anything else. But he would, you know, I would get involved in all of his X conferences every year, and gladly so. My feeling is I'm first and foremost a student of this subject, and I have to be guided by the information, wherever that information leads me. I happen personally to believe in the value of truth on this, and I, you know, long before I studied UFOs, I was always a fanatic on history and U.S. history and global history and politics and ideology and all of that. It's like that's very important to me as well, and so I can't help but sometimes look at the UFO subject through that. And yeah, I believe in. I guess I'll say I believe in disclosure. I believe in truth on the UFO subject. But no, I don't. I would not consider myself an activist. But I mean, I'm not unsympathetic to it. I mean, the people who've done that, and sometimes I lend a hand. I'm part of some of those efforts, but that's really never been my main thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get you, because I've. And there was a period of time where you were kind of like, I'm not just a historian, I'm a researcher. And, you know, at least for me, and I think Steve and others, when we call you a historian, it's like, you know, we mean that in reverence, that you play a really vital, important role. And today it kind of felt like you were going back to those roots a bit when you were in your lectures, which was kind of intelligently analyzing and putting together historical information to come to some conclusions or at least understandings, which I really appreciate. I think it's going forward a credible outlet to do exactly that is really important. And I think that's an important niche that you excel and you're the guy when it comes to that.
Thanks, Alejandro. I'm seeing the chat and I see a couple of names that I recognize. I just want to give my old friend Jennifer Stein. I saw her on there. And there's a question from Jocelyn. And I would like to just jump in on that. It was, she had a Trump statement about disclosure. And actually, I think if I read it correctly, and I know this is true, she said that Steve Bassett believes that the Trump administration is actively hindering UFO disclosure.
Oh, she said thinks that Trump is hindering. You're right.
That Bassett believes it. Yep. And I mean, the one thing I'm going to say is that where I will have a disagreement with Steve, and I love Steve. I've known him like a brother for a long time, but where I disagree with him is his insistence that Hillary Clinton was going to be the disclosure president, that it was going to happen, and that is because John Podesta was having the meetings with Tom DeLonge, and John Podesta, her campaign manager, what is UFO friendly. We all know that. And he did get her to talk a little bit about UFOs, like on Jimmy Kimmel and maybe one or two other places. But I have never believed and don't ever believe that she would have been a disclosure president. Like, I just don't believe that. And I think realistically, Podesta is a very smart political operator and realized that the UFO subject was not the third rail. At least that it wouldn't be the third rail for Hillary, that it might have been for other candidates in the past. And I think he just used it. But as far as the Trump thing, I think that is Steve's opinion. I wish I knew better where like Donald Trump personally was on UFOs. Like, I've actually really been interested to think about this. When he first got elected, I thought Trump's just crazy enough to do all kinds of stuff. Like, he's unlike anyone else that we've had in the White House. And this is the guy who tweets at 2 a.m. Like he's
I think it was yesterday. He was a record 200 tweets yesterday or the day before.
Really? Yeah. Like, God almighty. So like, I just could imagine Trump, and like, this is a guy who's not a life politician. He's a business guy. And he was very like alternative news friendly as a candidate. I mean, Alex Jones interviewed Trump.
Right.
A lot of other alternative news did as well. No other presidential candidate did that type of thing. So I thought, well, Trump's friendly to alternative news, and he's kind of like not in the. I mean, yeah, he knows all the Washington people because he's a billionaire, but he's different. He seemed different. And I wondered, I mean, I absolutely admit this. I wondered if Trump would just say, screw it. Everyone knows in a 2 a.m. tweet. Come on, people. We all know it's real. Of course, that hasn't happened. I don't think that's going to happen. Not at all. But whether he's actually hindering UFOs, and then someone saying Trump on UFOs said, not a fan. It's
he's been... I think he had a chance during the campaign to really attack Hillary and Podesta on UFOs if he wanted to.
He didn't.
Although I think he didn't. And I think Podesta knew he had him on that one because that's their base. I think there were even UFOs using UFOs to speak to the conspiracy base, which they thought was the Trump base, to try to get voters. That's my guess.
See, that's smart. Right.
Yeah, I think that's what he was doing. But then Trump didn't jump on that, probably because he didn't want to disenfranchise. But even as president, with these Navy videos, he's had no interest to really talk about them. He said, I don't know, let they look interesting, let the Navy address that. So he doesn't seem to have. And as far as hindering, at least there's no doubt he's aware. He watches Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson's been probably the most friendly media guy to Lou Elizondo and to the stars.
Yeah.
He has him on all the time, and Nick Pope also. So he's aware of what's going on. It just doesn't seem like he has any interest whatsoever, personally.
Yeah, actually, he's very, very much in this regard like the man he just replaced as president, whom he seems to despise, that's Barack Obama, who really showed a kind of a similar disposition about UFOs while he was president. Like really never seemed to take it seriously or move on it. So yeah, I don't know. Trump is one of these people, like I would just love, like you'd love to be a fly on the wall in one of his off the cuff meetings where he gets to talk about it, because I could be wrong, probably am, but I had him pegged possibly as a guy who might be into it, at least as a private citizen.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I'm actually surprised all these years later that he hasn't jumped in somehow, but he is, I think, over and over again chosen to stay
not
away.
A fan. Not a fan.
So what about QAnon? I would say I have the same opinion that Steve Bassett has when it comes to QAnon, and he's very clear about it. So this is something we can agree with Steve on, is that I really do not buy, and over again, the QAnon conspiracies prove to be completely wrong, or they discover it's like just recently one of the big QAnon guys is some dude in Italy, just random dude tweeting stuff, wrote a book.
Random dude. Oh, wow. I said when QAnon first hit the scene, I was intrigued by it. I'm not going to lie. And I thought, I wonder if there's something to this, but where I've always disagreed with the Q take on Trump is like they see him as this white knight going to take down the deep state. Like I believe in a deep state. There's no question in my mind that type of a thing does exist. And it just annoys me to no end when I hear mainstream analysts, rip on the fictitious deep state and trying to make fun of it. And they use phrases like conspiracy theory, which whenever they do that immediately invalidates them, in my opinion. But having said that, like I never saw Trump, even from the beginning, as doing anything about it. I mean, he allowed them to take down Michael Flynn over the most spurious, ill-gotten, illegally obtained, really unethical allegation. Now it's all come out. It's all come out on the effort that the FBI did against Michael Flynn, and Trump really just let him twist in the wind. He just let him go. Flynn was the one guy that Trump brought in who actually wanted to do a reorg of the intelligence community. Flynn was the one guy during the Obama years who actually said, correctly in my view, that the United States was behind a lot of the development of Islamic State. I mean, I remember in 2012 when Flynn said that, and I almost fell off my chair when I heard it. I thought, who is this guy? So I was actually impressed when Trump selected Flynn as the new director of national intelligence, and then Flynn just got taken down so egregiously, and I think shamefully. So, but I think what that says to me relating to the key thing is that Trump, he's not playing 4D chess. Like, he's not outfoxing the national security state. They outfoxed him, in my view.
I got a quick question to get in real quick here, because we're almost out of time and we got to go to the AMA. But yes. This is also related to this administration, and I think it's a good question to address. The Space Force, of course, right. Because in the UFO community, people think, oh, there's got to be some component related to UFOs, and this is part of UFO disclosure. Do you want to address that?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, you have to look at the creation of a Space Force on just pure geopolitical grounds. And to understand that, like, the United States has had a Space Force for a long time. The Navy and the Air Force both have had active presence in space. And the United States, as a geopolitical hegemon, which has always been seeking to dominate the world, you're not going to dominate the world if you don't dominate space. Like, that's a non-arguable point. It has to be done. All those smart bombs, all those smart weapons, all the satellite data that you got, you must have that. You must have domination of space as your theater of operations, and there's no other way around it. So what that means is other nations recognize this, China recognizes this, Russia recognizes this, and so there's always been a space war, as it were. One nation trying to disable another nation's satellites, electronic attacks, and so forth. So that's just been a thing. So it was under Obama that the United States developed a unified Space Force. It almost happened then. And I don't know why, but it didn't. But it almost did. And now under Trump, like, this is just momentum. It's almost, you could say, an inevitability in U.S. geostrategic strategy to have such a unified Space Force. The Navy and the Air Force, and probably the Army, were not happy about it. No one wants to give up their authority. But from an administrative point of view, it makes perfect sense. Now, what you could say relating to the UFO part, it's my personal belief that there are enough anomalies out in Earth orbit and beyond, unquestionable ones, to demonstrate that there's a UFO phenomenon in space. And so if there's a UFO phenomenon in space, you must assume that the NRO, which no one ever talks about, the National Reconnaissance Office, and probably the NSA and other space groups, are well aware of this. And so I think we can assume that this unified Space Force has a lot of classified black budget components that are hidden well within it. And one of them, I would have to assume, has an NRO component by which they are working with the Space Force and doing monitoring of the UFO phenomenon out there. I would believe that.
Somebody asked, how do you join? There actually has been commercials lately about joining the Space Force. So just go Google Space Force and you'll find it. They're really interesting commercials. But also, just one last thing, I was told to blow the horn. So I'll do that in a second here. But the one last thing is also corporations fearful for their satellites. They want protection for their satellites. We're by far the country that relies on satellites more than any other country. And so that's a big part of it. But this is our we're out there. So I guess we've got to go. And the people who have the AMA will be able to join us there.
Yeah, that'll be in about 15 minutes, I guess. Hey, I just want to thank everyone who's here. And, when I gave my 2 lectures, I didn't have the chat function on. I just couldn't. I couldn't do it. But it's been really fun. I recognize a lot of the names there. And I just want to thank all of you for attending this. And Alejandro, I thank you for being here. It's really a pleasure.
Thank you. I'm so flattered you asked me to do this. Thank you so much.
I'm absolutely there's very precious few people in this field who have their finger on the pulse as well as you. And you've been doing this as long as you have, pretty much everyone that there is to know out there. And I've always felt like you're just on the right side of this. And so I'm glad that we had this chance. And we're going to do it again.
Thank you so much. Yes, for sure. Thank you. It's always a ton of fun.
All right. Well, everyone, if you're going to be here for the AMA, we'll see you there. Otherwise, thank you all. And I don't know when we're going to do this again, but if we do it one day, we'll let you know. Thanks again. Bye.
Thanks.